2022 has ended, and with it, a fantastic year for gaming. But which games break the mold and stand out as the top 5 experiences of the year? Well, I asked you guys if you wanted to see a top 5 video, and you voted, yeah. Now fortunately, I covered this on my podcast in PS We Trust, so what I've done is I've taken the sections from that where I rank my top 5, and put them in video format. I hope you guys enjoy it, and remember this is just my personal list. There's a lot of games that I didn't have time to be able to play or didn't get a chance to play. So if there's any games that you think were criminally underrated and should have been included here, let me know. Put in the comments your top 5 and I'll be sure to check them out in 2023. Now without any further delay, let's dive in. Modern Warfare 2 comes in at my number 5 position. COD Modern Warfare 2, unlike Spencer, I put the time aside and played through the campaign twice. I played it once on normal difficulty, just really enjoyed my time with it. I think at the time I described it when I played it as just a game that gives you a permanent boner. It's just a game that literally makes you feel like a man. You feel that testosterone flowing through you as you destroy things and you sneak through things and you hear that gruff British accent from everyone that's there, from Price or the Scottish accent. It's a very British heavy game. And it just gets my dick hard. And I love it. It's just one of those things that, people really enjoy the Fast and the Furious saga. It's kind of mindless fun. But it's actually got a really good story. And it's really well acted. The voice acting is phenomenal. The motion capture is great. And it's actually a really good story that apes a lot of what came before in Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 1 from the PS3 generation. There's missions which are very similar, with the AC-130 flying above head, which still fits exactly well and still works amazingly well, as it did all those years ago. There's moments like that, as well as very specific crafting moments that come from being left alive to scour for resources, which gives a chance for Ghosts and Johnny's, Soap's character, to really connect, and it works. It just really works. It's a great experience from start to end, and it might be 6 hours for that campaign, but it's just phenomenal. And I wanted to, as soon as I finished it, started it again on a veteran difficulty and loved it all over again. Let alone, as Spencer's put aside here, the multiplayer, which has become my most played game for this entire year, which I've now clocked up 135 hours into. I adore Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I prefer it to Black Ops. I prefer it to literally anything I've played over the last few entries of COD since Modern Warfare 2019, which kind of brought me back into the COD ecosystem. It's the best COD I've played for the last number of years, and even though, as Spence alluded to, it's not perfect, the spawns aren't great at the moment, everyone plays like a bitch when you get into the top level lobbies. When you're racking up, a couple of games at a 4.0 kill to death ratio, you go into lobbies where people do not move, and they lie down in the middle of corridors and kill you for walking. But you take the rough with the smooth with this, and you may have a couple of games a night which go drastically bad, but the rest of the time you're stomping people from the top of the mountain all the way to the bottom. And Spence, I couldn't ask for a better partner in this, because I've just been enjoying every single night that we've played a little bit D by D and then switched to COD, and it's been a great time. And for a game that incorporates all the features of the DualSense into its design, its 3D audio is phenomenal, graphical presentation is great, and it runs like a dream. I don't know why this isn't included more and more people's lists. It's like as if it's a dirty word. Easily one of the best produced games of the entire year. And it's just a phenomenal experience. If for some reason you're one of the few people that haven't picked it up, I'd encourage you to buy it. My number 4 is a little game called Sifu. A game which got snubbed at the Game Awards. A game which came out at the start of the year and made such an impression on me that it landed straight into this list. Now, I played a lot of games this year. I played like 70 odd games, let alone the ones I've done for review on PS3, PS2, kind of all over the place. So to even get this high up on the list is a huge testament to how great this game is. I don't want to make this seem like as if this is kind of low on the list, because Sifu is the game that blew me away. I went in knowing that it was going to be a great time. That it was designed for me, for what I enjoy. You know, a hard game where it's all about your own skill. There's no excuses. Get in, beat the bosses. If you can't beat them, get better, come back. And that's what it's all about. What I love is you start the game and you think, oh yeah, I got the hang of this. You get through the first level and you're like age 62. And you're like, oh my god. And the idea that you have to get through the entire game at 23 or under seems like an impossible task. But the more you play, the better you get. And you start schooling people. And it becomes so stylish. And it becomes so impactful. Every hit feels great on the controller. Every single movement that you do, every choice that you make in terms of your combo or your ability to slap that ass, it all just gets paid off. And moments that you face like Sean, or you face that bird who's got that giant fucking stick who beat me into the fucking ground for hours after hours after hours. When you overcome them and you realize what it takes to win, it's something that, sure, you could probably go online and look this stuff up. But the joy is in realizing that yourself. And it's a journey that over its entire game was just a joy to play. And it's something that they've really supported this game over this entire year. We've got arena mode coming out early next year. And that is going to drag me straight back in. Just like some of the best games I've played on PS5, like with Returnal. These extra things, these extra modes, get you to play it in a different way, to unlock different suits, or just to challenge yourself in a new way, is great. And that's what they've done here. I may not be skilled enough to beat it on the hard difficulty they added in post-game, but I will run it through on normal at the very least and have a great time in arenas, because that's where I need to be. And Sifu is just a fantastic experience, a story of vengeance which is very light on story, tells you exactly what you need to do, but it fires you up. And the gameplay is probably the best gameplay I've experienced this entire year. It's just a phenomenal game that's expertly designed, and I adored every moment of it. But Stray was a game that I was taking the piss for a long time whenever we'd see it, saying that it was going to be my game of the year, it was going to be in the game of the year discussion. I was kind of just winding Phil up whenever it would come up, because he would be so anti-Stray. But it turns out when I actually put the time aside and the game came out and I just had a couple of days off work, I did not expect to be so enamored by a game. To have a game just grab me from the moment I play it until the end. To feel the emotion that I felt playing as a little cat. You start off and you fall down a massive ravine and you see that cat limp, and I literally cried. I literally had a tear go down my leg because I just saw my own cat in that. And I thought, Jesus, this is so lifelike. They just captured every moment of this. From the way that you literally paw at the different surfaces. And I think, oh, my cat does that to me every single night. The noises the cat makes, the different meows that are there from pressing the meow button. It becomes so addictive. Combine that with robot companions, which are visually appealing, but also have a lot of character and a lot of depth to them. This world just goes on, and each time, each area you go into is charming, is full of character, and full of wonder. And it's one of those games that you could tell is just a pure passion project, and I lapped up every moment I was in that world. It's a very special game, and it's a game that I'm sure that by the time we wrap up the PS5 generation and we do like a best of, and we do like a top 20 list like we did with the PS4, that this game will feature there. Because this is one of those games that will stick with me for years to come. Because it's emotional, it's heartfelt, and it's full of passion. And that's what I look for in my video games, and I adore every ounce of this video game. It might be 6 hours, but it's some of the best 6 hours you can put into PlayStation 5. An absolute must play. My number 2 is Elden fucking Ring. Game which came out at the start of the year, came out in February if I remember rightly. And as a FromSoft player, as a guy who adores the Soul series, I remember I came to this a little bit late because I've been playing a little game called Horizon. And Spence said to me at the time, when you start Elden Ring, you will wonder why you put time into Horizon. And he was right. He was completely right, because it blew everything I'd played at that point for pretty much the entire generation. I think at that point, I even went on when I completed it to say that I preferred it more than Returnal, which is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. Like, Returnal's been sitting on the top of my PlayStation 5 list since the launch of the game up until this point. So for any game to even get there, and I think the way I described it when we did our like reviews, and I gave it a 10 out of 10, and I said that it's everything that FromSoft has built in every single game it's put out is built towards this moment, and it's the realization of what it could be. And that's how I felt in February. Now, as the months have gone on, I've kind of soured a little bit on it compared to, say, most of the Dark Souls experiences, and it's mostly because I don't think it's got the same staying power. With the fact that it's an open world and you can do things in the way that you see them, and you can kind of take the threats on as you perceive them, and your own skill lets you do that, it kind of does limit you to a certain extent, because it does narrow you down a straight path just like any other Souls game does. But because it being such a huge undertaking, it's such a large endeavor, it doesn't have the same draw to bring you back into the experience. And that's why I haven't played through Elden Ring again. You know, normally at this point, I'd have played through Bloodborne 4 times. I'd have played through Dark Souls 3 at least 3 times. Even, Dark Souls 2 I played through at least 3 times. And I haven't done that with Elden Ring. And even though that initial experience, you know, the fight with Melania, the fight with, you know, Radahn, the fight with all these different bosses is so epic and so great. They're all so realized perfectly. There just isn't that draw for me to go back to it. And that's why it's reached my number 2 slot, because even though it's one of the best games of the year, to reach a number 2 is phenomenal. And my build was cracked. You know, I went from a full strength build, which I knew I would do, went in there, powered up both my weapons with Mystic Energy, which I've never done before, and just would one-shot a load of enemies and just have a great time. Took a lot of grind to get to that point, to like 78 odd hours to get to that kind of power level, but it gives you that ability to be able to do that, to break the game, to make it your own, and to really enjoy it. And you could play it through a blood build, which was the meta at that point, or you could play it the way I did, slightly off meta, but just as fucking broken. And whatever you want, just get through it however you play. If you play it with mimics, if you don't, if you play it just solo and just never rely on any summons, it's up to you. Just enjoy the experience. And what an experience it was. And it's one of those things that you wrap the game and you realize that you've experienced one of those one-in-a-generation style experiences where it hits it on every single level, that it deserves every praise it got. It deserves the Game of the Year award at the Game Awards. For me, it doesn't quite reach my number 1, but it's still a phenomenal experience on every single level. And FromSoft, slow clap to you, because you fucking nailed it. And this kind of brings me on to why my number 1 is my number 1. Because my number 1, listeners, you know, is God of War Ragnarok. I'm the only one on this podcast that's completed it. I've earned the platinum. And all I can say is where Spencer is, I watched where he last played. The game goes from there to infinity. It gets better and better and better. And if you think where you are, Spencer, is good, you haven't seen fucking nothing yet, fam. This game is exactly the reason why Horizon did not reach my top 5. Because it does everything that a sequel should. And it does it to perfection. It builds on everything that came before, improves on every system, improves on every character interaction, improves on every cinematic, and elevates every single part of the experience to be a game which is a once-in-a-generation experience. It is a game that every single thing within that has been thought out on how it can interact with every other system that's there. From its combat being a case of how you use each different weapon to make each one work better together. So you build up the ice, you make the ice form on them, you switch to your weapon, you switch to your Blades of Chaos, you switch to another weapon that I can't even talk about with you guys yet. And you build them all together with their R1 and their L2 abilities to make each one sing. And then when that finally comes together, you've got your parries, you've got your blocks, you've got your dodges, all of them coming together with the case that if you mess it up, you die. And that is why this game not only does that, but it creates cinematic moments that literally make every single hair follicle on your entire arm stand on edge. Because the music hits, the moment hits, the voice acting and the cinematography all come together. They coalesce to create something that you have not experienced since The Last of Us or Last of Us 2. To that same level where you think, fuck, let's go. And especially for someone that's been with Kratos on this journey since the first God of War, to see where he's come from and to see where he ends this game at is so fucking incredible. It's an absolute joy. From the start, you literally experience Kratos' character evolve, and you see how he's fighting against his true nature to avoid Ragnarok and to avoid the conflicts that are due to come to pass. And how that builds and then just ends is so sensational that I cannot put into words how special this game is. There are very few games that I end after 60 odd hours of playing on the hardest difficulty that this game has, bar one. Beat every single boss there is, do every single encounter, and then say, fuck, I wish there was a New Game Plus so I could do it all over again. So I could dive immediately back in and do it all over again. And that's the reason why it beats Elden Ring. I have no drive to go back to Elden Ring. I cannot fucking wait for New Game Plus on God of War so I can dive back in, high the difficulty up even more to the highest level, and just challenge myself with everything I've learned, because the entire experience feels that you are growing alongside Kratos. And it's one of those games that we will end this generation on, and we will all bring it up into our top 3. I guarantee it. The only studio that can even remotely match this will be The Last of Us 3. That's the only one I can think of. I can't think of anything else. They could put out Resistance 4 this year, or next year, or in 10 years' time, and it ain't gonna reach the same levels that this game achieves in its characters, in its art design, in every single facet. It's one of the best games I've ever experienced in my life. It's a top 3 game for me of all time. I adore every single moment, and the longer I go without playing it, the more I yearn for it. And that's when you know a game has really hit you. Because I watched a tiny moment of Spencer's gameplay the other day, and I was back in there, and I could not fucking wait to reinstall it and play it through again. This game, easily my top game of the PlayStation 5, easily my top game of this entire year. And if for some reason you're not a fan of Kratos, you're not a fan of God of War, you've stepped away from the series a long time ago, I'd encourage you to play this game, because you will not experience a game like this for years to come. My rant over. That's my game of the year. And that is my top 5 list for 2022. I hope you enjoy it. As I said right at the start of this, it's my personal list. It doesn't necessarily have to agree with yours, but I'd love to hear what you think. Feel free to put a comment below on your personal top 5 list, and who knows, I may even end up reviewing one of them this coming year. Now, these sections that I've taken this video from are from a 3-hour 20 podcast that we did over on In PS We Trust, a PlayStation podcast. We recently became a top 5 PlayStation podcast, and so if you enjoyed this and you want to hear what the other 2 hosts think in Spencer and Phil, please check it out. Links will be in the description and on the card above. And that's it for this video. Thank you ever so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. See ya.